Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Forward Corporation and T.R. McTaggart, Angler Quest Boats, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, 29 AM and FM stations across the great state of Michigan, talking about hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and all things outdoors, all things fun, all things biologically sound, biologically necessary, even ordained by God. And glad to have you along with us. So how has your week been? What have you done since we last talked? Anything fun? Have you had a chance to get outside much? To get out probably this time of year on the water, right? Or maybe out in the woods. Maybe you're putting in food plots. Maybe you're doing some habitat improvement. Maybe you're just taking a walk in the woods. It doesn't really matter, does it? Just getting out there is what I think is what's important, is what's fun. Get some fresh air, feel the rain, feel the breeze. This time of year, sometimes feel the heat, the humidity, the mugginess, the bugs. If you're out fishing like I was last weekend on Saginaw Bay, the bugs. It's nice when you're fishing, well, I was going to say big water, any water of any size, when the wind doesn't blow, so you can have a nice, calm day on the water. But the problem with that is oftentimes, at least in the month of June-ish, if you don't have wind, you have bugs. Now, they're not usually, at least where I fish there on the bay, biting bugs, but you might get thousands of them on your boat. I posted a picture on my Facebook page and Instagram, too, about it looked like one of my reels was up in my rocket launcher holder there on the Angler Quest, and it was covered with bugs. It looked like there was fur growing on the reel. There were so many bugs. And I don't want to say I've gotten used to them or gotten immune to them, but I don't let them bother me like some people do. Had a young lady on the boat with us last weekend. Those bugs just freaked her out. In fact, her name is Madison. About every 5 minutes, I hear a squeal, and she'd be jumping around because a bug got to her. You know what my solution for that is? I light a cigar. It does help keep the bugs away. Now, I have been told, and tell me what you think on this one, because I have not experimented with it. I've always thought it would work, but I've been told so many times that it doesn't. My Thermacell. The same Thermacell that I use in the hunting blind to get rid of black flies and mosquitoes, I thought for sure would work on the boat for the flies we get out there in the summertime. But I had a bunch of people tell me, oh, don't even bother with it. Don't try it. It doesn't work. Well, then last week I heard from several others who said, you got to try your Thermacell. It will work. So the next time out, I'm going to take a Thermacell. Is it going to work? Will it solve that bug problem? Those things certainly do work in the woods in the fall or in the springtime, don't they? I mean, they're very, very effective. I never would have dreamed how well those things work, but they do. So yeah, since we've last talked, I have been out fishing a fair amount. Had some really nice days on the water. Some beautiful, beautiful sunsets. Freebie family from our church. We were out the other night and had a nice evening on the water and saw one of the most beautiful, one of the most gorgeous sunsets I have seen in a long time. It was breathtaking. Got up early the next morning, went back out, took Sue Valley and her nephews and niece, Madison, along with us. Sue has been fishing with me for the last, I think, 3-4 years now. Always enjoy taking her crew out. We got a good day of fishing. Ended up in about 24 feet of water out there in an area that has some structure. So up to 18 feet down to 24 feet. trolling number 7 flicker shads, about 60 to 80 feet back. Now, when I first went out there, I was fishing below the fish because I was marking a whole bunch of fish, and I was marking the fish deep. So I was running my flicker shad back 110, 120, which I don't like to do because it increases your chances of tangles. And I wasn't doing real well on the fish. Finally got smart, brought the lead lengths on my flicker shads up to 60 to 80 feet, and really then started catching fish and had a very good day on the water. I have not been running spoons and lead core. Well, I haven't run it at all this summer, and I haven't run it much the last few summers. I've gotten away from that just because I find flicker shads on mono, 60 to 90 feet back is, I think, just an easier, cleaner, and in my case, more productive way to fish. Now, I know friends of mine like Jeff Godey and Brad Dupuis, who, by the way, will join us later in the show from AnglerQuest. He kills the fish on lead core and spoons. He is a master at it. I've done it. I have had some success, but not as much as I have with the flicker shads. Still to this day, if I go in skinny, I'm talking like 7 feet or less, which is hard to find these days. Water that used to be 7 feet is now 10, 11 feet. That's how much the water level has gone up. But if I go in real shallow, I will still throw out some good old-fashioned Hottentots. Almost always with a rattle. I like baits that rattle, especially when you've got some water with some color in it. It doesn't have the greatest visibility. That's why I like flicker shads. They have a rattle. Flicker shads, though, tend to run better out of the box. Hottentots can be notoriously squirrely for not running right, and the flicker shads, in my experience, tend to run a little bit better. Looking at the weather forecast here for the next few days, I think it's going to be a while before I can get back out again, which kind of breaks my heart because I was kind of getting in the groove. I was out there enough to know where the fish were, kind of getting settled in, and then Mother Nature comes along and she throws the kibosh to it, as she oftentimes does. Remember speaking of fishing, and honestly, this is old news by now, but you and I haven't had a chance to talk about it yet because this broke last week, right after I recorded the show. Evinrude is going out of business. Evinrude Johnson, a big name in the outboard motor industry for so many years. They say they're not blaming it entirely on COVID. They said they were having some problems before the whole COVID, before the Rona came along. But that didn't help them. What a shame. What a shame that is. I hate to see any business have to close their doors. I really hate it when it's an outdoor-related business, and I especially hate it when it is a long-standing business with a respected name, like Evinrude. So I'm sorry to hear that. And there are... I'm not going to obviously name company names, but there are 2 or 3 other companies that I personally know of here in Michigan that I am quite concerned might not recover from the financial impact of coronavirus. I pray that they do, and I'm sure they are praying they do as well. Remember that nice bear I shot in Ontario last August? Boy, I wish we were going back up there again this year, but we're not. That bear was a sow, a female bear, which is a completely legal target. I would have shot her even if I knew she was a sow because she was pretty good size. Well, she was like 261-ish pounds, something like that. When you kill a bear in Ontario, they pull one of the teeth and they send it off to the ministry so they can age the animal. Again, this was a sow, 261 pounds. She was 13 years old. I think that's pretty old for a North American critter. And I think that's pretty cool. Now, several years ago, I shot another decent bear there. In fact, the first big sow I shot, and she was, again, about 260 pounds. And she was 16 years old. Now, once I posted that, I heard from a lot of other people who also got the bear ages back on their Ontario bears. And 8 to 10 was kind of the average age. Some of the boars were actually bigger. They were up in the 300-pound range, and they were only 8 to 10 years old. But I find that very interesting that, 13 years old, 16 years old, even up there in Ontario where they don't see as many people and they don't see as many hunters as our bears here in Michigan do. Think about how many baits those bears have come into over the years, how many hunters those bears have fooled over the years, how much experience a bear gets in 13 years of life. Can you imagine if whitetails made it to 13 years old? If a whitetail made it to 13 years old, you'd never kill a deer that old until they went downhill and started getting senile. And I'm really, really looking forward to, coming out here in early July, the results for the Michigan Bear Tag licenses will be released, and I'm really, really looking forward to hopefully hunting the Newberry District the third season with Johnny Bowler. And as soon as that's locked in, I'll have Johnny here on the show to talk about it. Coming up here in this week's Outdoor Magazine show, after the break, Ali Shakur, fisheries biologist, tournament fisherman, hardcore outdoorsman, and all-around good guy, joins me. Then Captain Mel Stackpool of Great Lakes Charter Training with an update on what they are up to. It's kind of a fishing theme this week. In hour number 2, Don Miller about chasing muskies on Lake St Clair. Brad Dupuis of Angler Quest Boats will change to a non-fishing theme with this week's Ask Avery, talking about why are all the dead deer on the roadways, what can we do about them? And in hour number 3, Dave Mull and wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. Oh, Dave and Dave. That's coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Port Huron on WPHM. That's 1380 AM. You can hear us on the other side of the state in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And let's go north of the bridge, up to the Sioux, ESPN 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Speedy Blaze. Speedy Blaze is a safe, clean, water-resistant alternative to firewood. It's safe to cook over because it's made from recycled hardwoods. Michigan-based company, I love that. You can use it in your fireplace. You can use it in your camp stove. You can use it in your fire pit. Any place where you would burn wood, you can burn Speedy Blaze. It'll start quicker. It'll last longer because it's not as susceptible to moisture. And just an all-around good product. Check them out online at speedyblaze.com. That's speedyblaze.com. While you are online, of course, I would encourage you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And please check out AliShakurFishing.com. Ali Shakur, A-L-I, Shakur, S-H-A-K-O-O-R. AliShakurFishing.com, the website of a guy I think is a very, very interesting guy. He's a fisheries biologist. He's a tournament fisherman, hardcore angler, and just an all-around hardcore outdoorsman, and just an all-around good guy. And he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Ali, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike, as always. Thanks for having me. Really appreciative of the opportunity.
Well, the pleasure is mine. What have you been up to?
Well, recently we finally got our tournament season underway. We started with the Cabela's Masters Walleye Circuit out of Lorain, Ohio this past weekend. So that was a welcome step towards a little bit more normalcy in our lives.
Well, and whenever you can get on Lake Erie, I got a feeling you're happy because that's kind of your honey hole, isn't it?
It is my honey hole. I'm stepping away a little bit, getting into some other things. But, yeah, it was a fantastic time. The fishing is absolutely incredible right now from Monroe all the way to the Ohio-Pennsylvania border. It is just absolutely on fire.
You say you're getting into some other things, Ali. I mean, other outdoor-related activities, other fisheries, or am I getting into your business here? If so, I apologize.
Oh, no, other fisheries, which, I do anyway. I do a lot more than just Lake Erie. I don't post a lot about it. But we're going to step away. We're going to do some tournaments out west this year. We're going to go to Lake Sakakawea in North Dakota. While I'm there, I'm going to go up to Fort Peck Reservoir and do some fishing. I'm going to do a couple of events in Minnesota also. Just try to become a more well-rounded anglers as opposed to just a trolling game on Lake Erie.
Sure. So those will be non-trolling fisheries you're looking at out west?
Yeah, well, there'll be some trolling involved, but a good part of the bite there'll be some shiver minnows and casting and pitching jigs and whatnot. Again, just looking for other opportunities to improve as an angler.
When you do that, when you go to a new body of water and you start experimenting with new techniques, and I think this is going to be a good advice for anybody, where do you start? What's the first thing you do?
All local biologists, actually. Before you can get into tactics and where you're going to look and everything, you want to call the local biologist. You want to ask them, hey, where do the fish spawn in the springtime? What's the basic migration pattern? For instance, the Kakawea, the fish will spawn way west, and then as the water warms progressively, they'll move to the east. You want to ask them about primary forage species. Are the fish eating tulipy or smelt or emerald shiner? Just general things like that will then allow you to pull up the map and start looking for structures that fish will relate to for that specific time of the year, and for where that primary prey species will also hang out for that time of the year.
But Ali, you are a biologist. They're going to take your call because you are, you're equals. If some weekend warrior calls up a biologist, will they even talk with us?
Oh yeah. A lot of the guys on the circuit they'll call a biologist, the local office. Also a lot of DNRs. This information is free. It's online. You can go to Michigan DNR website. All the stocking information is there. All the sampling information is there for a bevy of lakes in the state of Michigan. So even if you can't get a hold of someone because of they're short-staffed or whatever, that information is out there. There are also several publications that will have that information. So for anyone willing to dig, that information is out there, and I think it's a vital cog in putting together a good program.
Well, what good does it do you to find out what the fish are feeding on? How does that affect how you will approach that fishery?
Well, it'll give you an idea of how the fish are reacting. For instance, in Lorraine this past weekend, normally this time of year the water is about 5 degrees warmer. The perch are schooling on the bottom. Also, because the surface water is warmer, those larger female walleye are on the bottom. This year, it's a little bit cooler. The perch aren't schooled up. The fish are a little bit more comfortable to roam the entire water column. Since those perch aren't schooled up, they're feeding on gizzard shad near the surface. So in areas where in the past, like when we won in 2018, we're catching fish 150 feet out with a 2-ounce weight. We're fishing 35 down, 40 feet down. Our biggest fish came 40 and 60 back on a bandit. We're talking 10 feet down over 45 feet of water, 50 feet of water. So knowing that those fish were feeding on gizzard shad as opposed to yellow or white perch, right away we knew our best bet's going to be fishing high in the water column, and it panned out to be exactly that.
Will a walleye ever come up and feed on the surface like, say, a steelhead would?
Yes. We actually, funny thing, also down there, we were trolling along in about 40 feet of water, and I saw a fin in front of the boat. And as we got up to it, it didn't move until we passed it. About an 8 or 9 pound walleye sitting right under the surface with his tail underwater. We saw it 4 times this past weekend. Additionally, I used to fish some after-work bass tournaments in Irish Hills, and there's been many occasions where I've caught walleye on top water. Also after dark, I'll go down and cast Lake Erie, wade the shoreline, and late in the season, December, January, we're reeling so slow that the bait, the crankbait doesn't even break the surface. It's acting more like a wake bait, really? And you can hear the walleye come right up and slurp it off the surface. So yeah, they'll come up and feed quite often.
Oh, that sounds pretty fun. Which tournaments are you looking forward to most as you head out west? Which bodies of water?
I'm really looking forward to Kakawea. It's a really big body of water. It's an impoundment on the Missouri River. Has salmon in it. Last time National Walleye Tour was there, they were making 100-mile runs one way to get to the fish. So I think it's going to be a challenge to really nail down key locations that, winning fish or fish that'll get us in a good position will be. So I think it's going to really test me as an angler and really put my thought processes to the test on how to best break down such a large body of water, but it's so different than what I'm used to fishing.
I can't even imagine a 100-mile run.
It can be challenging, especially if the weather's bad. Of course, if it gets too bad, you can't make those runs. And again, that goes into planning. Okay, if we can't make that 75-mile run, where are fish 3 miles from the launch that are going to give us the best plan? So you have to plan and practice for every eventuality. But they're not comfortable, but it's part of the game. We make them, and it's fun. It's fun.
Well, and it wasn't that many years ago that boats didn't have enough fuel capacity to make that run like that and back.
No, really, and it's almost turned into recently where the walleye game is turning into an arms race where, the boats are bigger. Guys are running Ranger 622s with 400s now.
400s?
Warrior has a model coming out where it's going to be rated for 450. And so, but the good guys, Corey Springle, who I think is the best in the game right now, along with my buddy Max Wilson, for years he ran a 250, and he got out there and he was hard to touch. So, you really, if you put your time in, you really don't need those. Companies aren't going to like that. But I started tournament fishing in an 18-foot boat with a 150-horse Evinrude on the back, and I qualified for the championship 4 times out of that small boat. So, if you put your time in and do your homework, you can compete, and not just to talk about tournaments, but you can go out and catch fish anywhere at any time.
You mentioned Evinrude. What do you think about those guys going out of business?
Wow, I was really shocked. I have a Mercury Verado on my boat now. It's my first non-Evinrude I've ever had, going back to about 15 or 16 years old. Really shocked, curious as to why. A little bit concerned with possibly a monopoly being formed by, one of the other large companies kind of taking over. Mm-hmm. Wondering, what's going to happen with the industry, and that's the more alarming part. Companies are starting to step away from sponsoring events and putting money into the field, into fishing. And so I'm just kind of wondering where we're going with this. I know part of it has a lot to do with COVID and production being shut down and everything. But I'm a little bit alarmed as to where the industry's going.
I see hunting and fishing, the outdoor industry, because that's the only industry I really have a lot of experience in. It's getting to be the corporate conglomerate mentality. You've got a good sized company. They run it very well. They're making money, and some big company comes in out of the blue that has no alliance or no relationship with the people who got them to that point. New marketing people come in, and the first thing they want to do is change everything because they want to prove that the previous people didn't know what they were doing. And I don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think it's good for the people who are in the industry.
I don't either. I wish that, of course, bottom line, they're in it for profit. But unfortunately, you don't see, people like you and I, hardcore outdoorsmen, fishermen, who are involved at upper levels. Yeah, we'll get some input in on design and on product and things like that. But when it comes to decisions being made, at that level, unfortunately, it's just about the bottom line, and we as anglers eventually are the ones who suffer with higher costs, less availability, and things of that nature. So, it is rather disheartening.
Ollie, hang tight. We got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, though, I want to catch up with you on your research. That's one of the reasons I think you're such an interesting guy is, aside from being a really good fisherman, you're also a researcher, so be thinking about that. And also coming up yet this hour, Mel Stackpool, Captain Mel Stackpool of Great Lakes Charter Training will be joining us. You might know for the last couple of weeks I've been talking about this. I do now have my charter captain's license, and I got it because Captain Mel Stackpool's class, so I highly recommend that. Coming up in hour number 2, we're talking Muskies on Lake St. Clair with Don Miller. Then Brad Dupuis of Angler Quest is going to join us. The Ask Avery segment is coming up in hour number 3, end of hour number 2. And then in hour number 3, Dave Mull going to tell us the story. Now, this happened a few years ago, about his fishing boat sinking on Lake Michigan, 5 miles offshore. I think they were out of St. Joe. He's also a big kayak fisherman these days. We'll talk about that. And, of course, wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar has a great fish recipe. So it's kind of a fishing theme this week, as you would expect in the middle of June. Check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and Ollie's website as well, OllieShakurFishing.com. Got to take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. you can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. Complete lineup there, complete lineup of services. Whenever I need the Angler Quest, anything done on that, or that Merc, that 225 Merc that sits in the back of the Angler Quest, I go to the folks at Linwood Beach Marina. Just a beautiful facility and great people, and very close to some prime fishing grounds on Saginaw Bay. For more info, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Also check out AliShakurFishing.com. That is the website of a tournament angler and fisheries biologist, Ali Shakur. Ali, I've asked you this before, but I love to get your perspective on it. Does being a biologist make you a better fisherman in some ways?
I don't know if it really makes me a better fisherman per se, but I think it has improved how I think about breaking down a body of water and how I think about fishing and how I think about the interactions between the fish and what they may be eating will affect their positioning and how they move in a lake. I'm really into that. It really tickles my fancy. So yeah, it's really improved that part of it. Everyone can catch fish. Everyone can go out there and catch the one in the bag. But it's the best anglers are the ones who make the best decisions. And in order to make the best decision, you have to have, the best input, the best data that you can get your hands on. So in a roundabout way, yes, I do believe it's made me a better angler.
Well, and speaking of data, you've been involved in some pretty interesting projects. What are you up to these days?
Well, we're just getting back, actually. As part of this shutdown, everything was closed, so we were not allowed in the lab. I just got access 2 days ago to go back. So we've been planning and kind of plotting and planning our next steps. So I'm still going to be doing some research dealing with microcystis. As you remember, the harmful algal blooms on Lake Erie that caused Toledo to lose their water supply in 2014. So I'm taking a look at the effect of that particular organism, microcystis, on early life history of walleye, which we've talked about before. Branching off, I'm going to be doing hexagenia or mayfly, and then some prey species like spot-tail and emerald shiners.
And what do you want to learn about mayflies and spot-tail shiners?
Well, I want to learn whether or not exposure to microcystis changes one behavior for mayfly, maybe burrowing behavior because they are burrowers, or feeding behavior. Same thing with walleye, yellow perch, and prey fish, because microcystis produces toxins, and those toxins have been shown to affect things like growth, survival, reproductive success, compounded over years. So just trying to investigate if there are any negative effects of these increasing harmful algal blooms that are increasing in severity every couple of years.
Can you do these studies in the lab? Can you replicate conditions like you'd see out in the water, or is this all out in the field?
No, actually, we can replicate it. I have a few videos up on my Facebook and maybe my Instagram, and I'm going to be doing some more. We actually will culture. We have a culture of about 14 different types of cyanobacteria and other types of green algae. We culture them. We have what's called a flow cytometer, where we can actually count how many cells are in a milliliter. So we can actually mimic exactly the cell count that you find in a bloom on Lake Erie. And so we just shrink down. I can do an experiment in a flask, in a 250 milliliter flask, and mimic what's happening in the lake as far as exposure.
That's pretty cool and pretty high-tech stuff, Ali.
It is pretty high-tech. It's pretty cool to see. It's fun. I get to take, fertilize eggs and culture fish and raise fish from egg. I get them at about 24 hours post-fertilization and raise them up through juveniles. And I've learned a lot seeing how fish react. Walleye I have in tanks. I can just sit and I can feed them and I can see what they do in different situations. It's really kind of shed some light. Things you hear, the walleye will and will not do. They, in fact, will. So it's really cool to see. And again, I'm going to be posting some videos here, trying to increase my footprint as far as science communication goes.
And I knew about the website and yeah, your Facebook page. I think I'm following you on Instagram. Are you Ali Shakur Fishing on Instagram?
Yeah, I am Ali Shakur Fishing on Instagram. There are some brief videos just showing some of the cultures in the lab. I may have a couple of videos of larval walleye that have just hatched that are just going up to fill their air bladder for the first time. I'm going to be putting some more things on there. Also on Twitter. Also, I'm recently new to Twitter in the past couple of weeks. Put up the first video the other day at the request of my advisor, kind of describing in under a minute what I do for my research. But I filmed on Lake Erie. I kind of like it.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, but those things will be up there for people to take a look at.
Well, Ali, always a pleasure to talk with you. Good luck on your Western adventures, and hopefully you and I will get a chance to finally meet in person pretty soon.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. I'm going to be up that way for the Masters Walleye Circuit out of Muskegon, doing some fishing with my good friend Lance Valentine also. Really looking forward. And again, thank you for the opportunity to come on the show. I really enjoy myself every time. I think you have an outstanding format. You have a killer lineup today. I'm going to hang around and listen to the rest of the show.
All right, Ali, I appreciate that. AliShakurFishing.com is his website, AliShakurFishing.com. In fact, I learned about Ali through our mutual friend, Lance Valentine. Again, Lance, one of the truly good guys of the fishing industry. Walleye 101, teachingfishing.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Captain Mel Stackpool of Great Lakes Charter Training will wrap up this first hour of this week's show. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM. And north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ, 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Great Lakes Charter Training. I've been talking about this for a while now. Great Lakes Charter Training and Captain Mel Stackpool. I am absolutely sold on their operation. This is the company, this is the class, this is the training that allowed me to get my captain's license, and I am absolutely convinced I could not have done it on my own. Now, there is a process in place where you can try to get it on your own, but oftentimes people who have tried and couldn't do it come back to Captain Mel, take his classes, and they succeed. And Mel is with us. GLCtraining.com, by the way, the website, GLCtraining.com. And Captain Mel Stackpool is on the line with us now. Captain, welcome back. How are you?
Good morning, Captain. You got your license, Mike Avery.
yeah. And it does feel very good, kind of teaching an old dog a new trick type of thing. And I wanted to get you on, Mel, first of all, just to publicly thank you, because, again, I could not have done this without your classes. And just find out where you guys are at these days now. Are you back in business? Are you back to business as usual after the COVID?
Back to business as usual? Nah, not even close. Are the guys coming back in? Absolutely. The Coast Guard gave us a real big thumbs up when they allowed us to do some online live webinar training, but we haven't been back in the classroom yet. That'll be July 11th.
July 11th. Where's that first class going to be, Cap?
Harrison Township down here in Mount Clemens, Lake St Clair. And it's a fantastic time in that we're doing the socially distancing, maximum 9 students per class. It sure is a one-on-one kind of a feel in there with an instructor in a small group.
And then will you eventually start adding classes throughout the state again?
Yep, and we've actually done that. On the website, glctraining.com, July 11th, August 8th, September. We've got our summer-fall schedule back up throughout Bay City. We're doing stuff up in Cedarville and the UP, over in St. Joe, and also in Ludington.
And you actually guarantee that if somebody takes your class, they will pass the Coast Guard test?
Well, if somebody's willing to commit, the people who don't pass the class are the ones who walk out, quit halfway through, and just go, I can't do it.
Yeah.
The people who've stayed might need some extra help. We don't charge for that. Whether it's an extra weekend, an extra week, or have to sit through the whole program again. I've tutored many of students at my dining room table and theirs, and it's just that's what makes it all worthwhile. If I can't get you through it, I'd hand you your check back.
Who I almost said who should take your class, and you would say everybody. But who can benefit from this? What types of things do we want to do on the water that we need to be licensed for?
Anything for hire. I don't think everybody needs this class. If you're looking at just a basic boater, and I get that new boater who thinks, I'm going to go get a captain's license. That's not the case. But if you want to get paid to play on the water, we're doing stuff for Homeland Security, the Marine Division for the Sheriff Department, the fire boats for the townships on the water, in addition to all of our fishing charters who are finally back out there, which is awesome. We've been pounding the walleye down here. But the ferry boat, the Mackinac Island Ferry, those are our students.
I did not know what to expect from your classes, and I was quite, I'll say even surprised, just how in-depth and how much information comes at you and how time-intensive the process of getting your license is by the time you deal with the Coast Guard and get through that whole rigmarole.
Yeah, it is somewhat daunting. I think most people think after they finished the class that the paperwork is probably as hard as the course was. But again, we make it turnkey. We'll bring the applications through the program. We'll walk you through it. We want that phone call before you send it in to double check, dot the I's, cross the T's. You shouldn't have to go to a third party and pay extra money for somebody to expedite your paperwork through the Coast Guard. That's all a process we've done, put together over this August, 31 years.
And 31 years, congrats. And I did that with my instructor, Captain John Littlefield. I said, John, I'm getting ready to send this in. I have a few questions. Help me out. And he walked me through a couple of issues. And it went through first time. I got delayed a while because of the COVID, but I didn't have to resubmit anything. And again, I have you guys to thank for this. I do not plan on running paid charters, but because I take people out who, for charity auctions, I just felt better with this in my back pocket. And Mel, I couldn't have done it without you guys.
I sure appreciate the high five on that.
GLCtraining.com is the website, glctraining.com. Classes are getting ready to get started back up in July. And Mel, again, I appreciate it. And I highly recommend anybody who wants to get licensed. I always send them to you guys at glctraining.com. I think you're certainly the way to go. And again, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir.
Captain Mel Stackpool, the guy behind Great Lakes Charter Training, and the guy, really, him and one of his instructors, Captain John Littlefield, who actually taught my class, but he taught the classes that were designed by Mel Stackpool. If you're serious about doing this, don't screw around with trying to do the self-study and trying to do it online and all this stuff. It's going to cost you some money. The class is like $995. It's like a 7 to 9 day intensive class. You're in the classroom every day for several hours. There's a lot of information to digest, but it's a very specific and very methodical process. They've been doing this for a long time, and they know how to get things done, and I appreciate it. glctraining.com. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we'll talk with the captain, Don Miller, of Miller Sport Fishing on Lake St. Clair, about fishing big muskies there in hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Forward Corporation and T.R. McTaggart, Angler Quest Boats, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, 29 AM and FM stations across the great state of Michigan, talking about the history and tradition of this wonderful outdoor lifestyle that we are so blessed with here in Michigan. and we occasionally talk about topics beyond our state line. But this is a Michigan show. It is a Michigan-based outdoor radio show. It is produced, recorded, scheduled. I mean, it's a radio show. And if you can, I would encourage you to listen to it on your local AM or FM station. All 3 hours of the show, in fact. If you can't, if your local affiliate doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, you can always listen to the podcast version of the show. Podcasting is a big, big thing these days, and I think podcasting is wonderful. I've been doing podcasting for a long time. In fact, I do some shows that are strictly podcasts, like the Jays podcast, the Angler Quest podcast, the Offshore podcast, the Killer Food Plots podcast, and several more. But the radio show, Outdoor Magazine Radio, is also made available as a podcast, and you can hear that, well, let's see, many, many places. I would send you to the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. MikeAveryOutdoors.com, the online source for all things Outdoor Magazine Radio and Mike Avery Outdoors. I also put the podcast on the Facebook page, Mike Avery Outdoors on Facebook. It's on Avery Outdoors on Twitter. I put it up on my LinkedIn page. It's on iTunes. It's on Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Radio.com, and several other places that I wasn't even aware of. Suffice to say, anywhere that you get your podcasts, you can probably hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. But again, regardless of whether you're listening to the podcast or the broadcast version of the show, I thank you very, very much. I love our state. If you've heard the show before, you know I am an unabashed fanboy for Michigan. I grew up here. I love our natural resources. I love what our state has to offer as far as fish and wild game. Because when you look at our state, like if you go to the far western UP and you go down to the southeast corner of the lower, it's like geographically and demographically two different worlds. But both of those areas and everything in between offers outstanding outdoor opportunities. I'm thinking right now of Lake St. Clair and the Muskie Fishery on Lake St. Clair. You know, Minnesota, you talk about Minnesota being a big muskie fishery. Over in Minnesota, they call muskies the fish of 10,000 casts, meaning you're going to spend a lot of time on the water and burn out your shoulder and your forearm casting for fish before you catch one. Well, you want to try something a little easier? And in my opinion, I got to be honest, more fun. Go to Lake St. Clair and troll for those fish where you're going to have multiple fish days. Don Miller is a guy who has been fishing Lake St. Clair for years. He was trained by the master himself, Homer LeBlanc. In fact, Don took me one of my first trips down there into Homer's basement. It was like a shrine, a muskie fishing shrine. And Don's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Don, welcome. How have you been?
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing just great. How's the fishing been?
The fishing's been good. This is my 40th year. I hate to date myself back, but this is 40 years now. So I've been around the world on Lake St. Clair a few times at about 5 miles an hour. So.
Well, Don, if this is your 40th year, you must have started when you were 10 years old then, right?
Right.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Don't tell everybody.
Yeah.
I forgot a lot of things way back when, but it comes back every once in a while. So
40 years. Wow.
The fishing has been good. Of course, I'm under the understanding that the Canada border is closed, which is okay because the lake levels are even higher than last year. And I think that just puts more into the Michigan's venue to do more fishing in Michigan because, of course, a lot of guys like going over across the border because there are weeds coming up on the Michigan side. But just on the opposite side of the coin is that the more weeds you have, the more predators you have. And with the water a little higher, it's going to give you more time to fish in Michigan without having to worry about a lot of weed blow around the area and get into areas like New Baltimore, Salt River, North Channel area, Strawberry Island, Black Creek, the Spillway, Grosse Point Yacht Club area, and over by the Delphine and off the dumping grounds, of course. So all those areas hold a lot of big fish.
Don, you talk about weeds. I hate weeds. They make it so hard to troll for fish. But, man, on the other side, on the flip side, fish love to hide in weeds.
They do. You can't have a weedless lake without having fish. I mean, the determining factor is you're always going to want to fish into the wind, because if you get into the wind and up on the lee shore, which is the shore that the wind is blowing from a little bit, you're going to have less debris on your fishing lines and a cleaner presentation to pick up your fish. So, I mean, you have to figure it out a little bit, but you don't want to be downwind, sitting downwind of a sort of somewhat windy day. I won't get out there if it's a windstorm, but 5 to 15 miles an hour. You don't want to be on the downwind side. You want to get upwind into it a little bit if you can. Set yourself up.
Don, how has that muskie fishery there on Lake St. Clair, how has it changed? How has it evolved from when you first started?
When I first started, if you would have seen if you have gotten a strike in a day, it was a good day, whether you boated a fish or not. And if you would have seen 60 to maybe 80 fish in a season, and you worked hard for that, and one fish being 25 to 30 pounds that you got to the boat, you would have really been like King Kong, But today, I mean, I think we posted numbers last year of upwards of better than 350, and I think around 24 or 25 of those fish were 45 inches or better. And one of them was a little over 40 pounds, 53 inches, and about 41 pounds. I'm not saying we lost some heartbreakers, and had them on for a while, and they got off and beat us. But ironically, you'll always remember the ones that beat you more than the ones you caught. But
yeah.
That's what keeps you coming back.
And you never lose a small fish. It's always a big fish.
That's the truth.
By the time you tell the story, that's the truth, at least, right?
Right. Right. And you always remember the ones that stole your favorite bait, too. So
isn't that funny? It's especially with muskies. I bet it's in some ways it's like deer hunting. As you get a special fish, you're going to remember that story of catching that fish or losing that fish, just like you might a big buck.
You do. I could tell stories all day long on losing a fish or getting a fish, but you keep going back and say, if I had this to do again, I would do it differently, maybe a little bit. But when you mark little spots on your GPS when you're driving around, and the public may not know what you're doing, but what you're doing basically, for street terms, we're going to call, you've got a little icon on your bird's eye view of your lake map with your navionics unit. And I'm staging a drive-by shooting because they're territorial. They'll range an area of a couple of miles unless something unnatural forces them out. And when you got a little icon where you've had an encounter with a big brute, you like to go by and, with your lines cleaned up and a clean presentation, to go through that area and see if you can't trigger something again, to see, try to create something to happen for your people on the boat. So I try to premeditate things a little bit.
You say that you think a big muskie will have a couple of mile range? That's impressive.
Yeah, they'll stick around. They're not going to, unless they're really forced out of their area, they're not going to go 20 miles or 15 miles from one spot of the lake to another. They're going to stay in an area where pretty much where they're born, like a deer would. And, the truth of the pudding is, I don't have names for fish. I'm not that eccentric, but I've actually boated some fish with weird characteristics on them that I noted in my diary and logbooks, to where you would see part of the face was cut off where somebody used a knife, and it would be like July 2nd, 1999, and you would say, well, I picked her up on this one spot, and you got it noted, and you got last year's diary on the book with you, of course, and then this year's new diary going by recording your latitude and longitude where you pick up strikes. and coincidentally you pick up a big strike and you see the same fish again, probably within a couple hundred yards of where you picked her up a year ago.
Wow.
You know? So, I mean, that's happened to me too many times to count. We're not talking thousands, but several, I'd say a couple hundred real notable times that I could say over my career to where I've seen something like that.
Wow.
To where I'm convinced that the fish are absolutely territorial. And
Don, hang tight.
I'm led to
Hang tight. We've got to take a break here. We're talking with Don Miller of Motorcity Muskies, the website millers-sportfishing.com, millers-sportfishing.com. He is a master at trolling for giant muskies on Lake St. Clair. The guy's been doing it for 40 years now. How impressive is that? millers-sportfishing.com. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Tawas on WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ, that's 1090 AM, and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY, 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website, mucc.org. That's mucc.org. Also, a reminder, while you are on that website, you can save 25% on your MUCC membership by using the promo code MIKE, all caps, M-I-K-E, and save 25% on your MUCC membership at mucc.org. Right now, we're talking with a long-time Lake St. Clair Muskie captain. His name is Don Miller. The website is millers-sportfishing.com, millers-sportfishing.com, Motorcity Muskies. Don, let's talk a little bit about the specifics of how you are targeting these fish. Number one, you're trolling, but you're trolling pretty fast.
Yeah, speeds we're covering right now or at this time of year are right around 4 miles an hour, but as the summer progresses, we'll speed up to around 6 miles an hour, trolling a bait behind our boat as the metabolism increases. The lakes are higher right now, Mike, so it's going to take a little more time for the lake to warm up to where their peak metabolism is at. So I like to look for the transitional color lines out in the lake that occur maybe out in front of the mouths of a creek or a river, and try to key in on a slight temperature change and slow down a little bit to around 4 miles an hour and let them feel the bait a little bit more rather than chase after it like they like to sometimes. They'll move to get it, but their peak metabolism is 67 to about 70 degrees when the lake hits that climate. Right now, it's right around 63, 62, so it's going to take a little time for it to get up there, you know. The fishing's been good.
Do you run baits with rattles in them, or do you let just the hooks banging against the body? Is that enough noise?
I have some baits with rattles in it, and I'm a little out to school on it. I really don't think there's any difference. If we're going to troll with a bait, the wooden ones work just as good as the plastic ones. The rattles, I don't think, are any different in my findings anyway. Some guys might say different, but I mean, I'm not going to argue with the other guys because they got success with them. Certainly, if the program you got is working, don't go fixing it, you know. But mine's been working good for 40 years, and I'm not going to say that it needs any repair at this point. I'm having pretty good success.
Yeah. At this point, there's no sense changing things dramatically. That's for sure.
Bucktails seem to be pretty good. I'll give the credit to the double-bladed bucktail thing. Those things they can do some damage. They're very good lures. I didn't use them for years. The Eppinger people, the spoons, they got some good stuff out there too. I'm not adverse to spoons. So it's all in the action of the color and what they like. Some days they like a wobble, some days they like a twirl, some days they like a wiggle. I mean, you're not going to argue with them. Whatever they want, put it out there. And put your best foot forward, because if it's in the water and it's moving the right speed, some muskie is probably going to find it out there in that place.
But big baits, I mean, if you're fishing big fish, you're fishing big baits, usually.
Usually you are, yes. I mean, I like any size between 6 to 8 inches for my baits. Some guys like them bigger. I got to tell you that some of the biggest fish I've seen in my career came on an 8-inch jointed believer, or 6-inch Loki or Wiley or something like that. I mean, I don't see the need to really go much more bigger than 8 inches. Some guys in certain parts of the country, I know over in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota, and Illinois, in that area. In New York, they like to use the big 10, 12-inch. Up in Green Bay, those guys are throwing out broomsticks painted up with hooks hanging off them. They're 12, 14 inches long and casting them. And so I've seen all kinds of things go on. But for Lake St. Clair, I think if you're going to troll, I think that I'd be fairly comfortable with anything between 6 to 8 inches that doesn't plane out or skip behind the boat, and you're pulling it back there effectively with a clean presentation. Some muskie probably somewhere in that lake's going to find it and hop on.
Well, no disrespect to our friends in Minnesota, but doggone it, if I'm going to listen to somebody on how to catch muskies, it's going to be you guys on Lake St. Clair.
I think there's a lot of substance in that speaks in volumes. That years ago, when I first started, if you would have seen 65 to 80 muskies a season, and one of them being 25 to 30 pounds, you would have really thought you were something great. But today, it's not uncommon, because of the catch and release ethics, to see upwards in the numbers of 300 to 500 a season being caught. And many of those fish are 25 to 40 pounds in that mix. I mean, it's a good mixed bag. Not every muskie you see is going to be a big one, but just the same note, too, if it were all big, you'd think something was wrong with the lake.
Sure.
So you got a good mixed bag going on that tells you reproduction has taken place. And arguably, I think you could state right now that if you were to talk about a world-class fishery for muskie, I think you have to bring Lake St. Clair into the conversation. It's on the threshold, you know.
Is it all catch and release on your boat and even there on the lake? Can you keep a muskie on Lake St. Clair if you want to?
You can keep them. It's legal. It's legal to keep them. But the guys that are purists that are fishing them out there, the boats are set up for it, they're not keeping any fish that I know of. I haven't heard of anybody maliciously going out there and taking a fish home just to show it off. The graphite reproduction thing done by some of the guys that are out there doing it, Rick Lax in Wisconsin does a great job, and I plug him on my website. Those guys, there's no need to kill a big fish like that, because they're putting over 100,000 eggs back into the system when they reproduce, and it's all about genetics, the same thing as white-tailed deer. When you get a good strain of white-tailed deer in an area with a nice monster buck, you know he's putting good things in the offspring. And the same thing with those big females. They're putting good things back in that lake, but the biology department tells me that 0.1% of that 100,000 eggs lives to make it. So you're talking about roughly 100 muskies make it to adult life out of 100,000.
Oh. How do you handle those big fish when you get them to the boat? I mean, I know you're very careful. I know you want to make sure you can release them alive. So is there a preferred way to fight them, to bring them in, and then to handle and release them? What's the secret there, Don?
A lot of guys in the smaller boats are using cradle nets to bring them in and take the hooks out, and then they take the measurements and girth while they're down the net and still in their own environment rather than take them out. And then maybe they'll lift them out for one big picture and then put it back in the lake right away if they don't have the means to support a live well on the boat. Where I have a live well on my boat. It's a 60-inch live well. And I can put a couple of bigger fish in there if necessary. Sometimes you get doubles. And what I'll do is I'll put them in there in their own environment and let them get back to their own caliber of being upright, and then release them back in the lake after a picture gets taken. So
a 60-inch live well, that's pretty big.
Yeah, it's a freshwater pickup off the lake, and it's keeps the freshwater pumping over their gills and their head coming in there. And sometimes we use ice on them to cool them off in there a little bit, because they get hot like an Olympic runner would in a race. They're fighting for their life out there. When they come to the boat, they don't know. You just want to have your picture taken with it and then release it back in the lake. But the smaller boats that don't have my size, the nets over the side of the boat, the cradle nets, work very effectively.
How does a big muskie fight? Are they going to fight like a king salmon?
I think a king is comparably, I'm partial, but I'm going to say a muskie is like a king on steroids. So I'm going to say that they can start with 5 feet of line behind the boat on you, and in a matter of a minute or two, have you back to where you're back a couple hundred yards on you, and just about taking you to the spool. And kings, I've seen some kings do some pretty dastardly stuff too to anglers on the lake. I mean, they've cut our lines out of the back of the boat and spooled them out. So they're comparatively about the same, I would say, in the same league.
And when you talk about
fish is.
A bait 5 feet from the boat, that's a common tactic. That down rod right there in the prop wash, those big muskies will come right in and feed and hit a bait right at your boat.
Right at the back of the boat. I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, if you were to stage a bait back there and all that propulsion going on, is that people don't realize that muskies are curious and will come off the back of the boat because they don't have any natural enemies. I mean, I've asked a lot of people, what natural enemy does a muskie have? And people will tell me, man. And I'll say, well, unless you sleep under the water at night and you have gill plates, you're not a natural enemy. So they're really the top of the line freshwater predator. And off the back of the boat, that gurgitation of bubbles back there, I think simulates a school of bait fish running away from them. And they'll frolic around in there looking for something. And if you've got something staged in there and 5 feet off the back of the boat, I usually set the rods down in there with about 5 feet of line off the back with a 20-ounce ball hanging on an inline sinker in there with about a 5 or 6 foot leader. And the lead ball is even with the back of the boat. And when they hit that, you don't need to worry about that heavier weight because you'll yank that thing around like it's nothing.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
So, I mean, a lot of guys just can't imagine that, you know. But when you get a good rascal in there that's 30 to 40 pounds, that 20-ounce weight is nothing. Just believe me, they'll take that, they'll throw that around like a shot putter, you know.
I know you got a late start on the season, Don. Do you have any openings for people yet this summer?
There's good openings this summer available. July offers a lot of opportunities still, and late July and through August is all good. September even too.
Oh, so later in the summer is actually maybe even a little bit better for you.
Sure. It's good fishing in summer, late summer. Late summer, early fall. A lot of people don't realize that the fall feed starts on muskies when the change of daylight occurs. When you get down to the daylight hours of what's going on, is that their feeding activity is triggered by the amount of daylight. And while the feed bag is still good out in the middle of that lake and it's good fishing, it's getting dark at 7:30 at night. It's not getting dark at 10 o'clock at night anymore like it is in the third week of June.
Well, Don, good fishing to you. I got to take a break, Don. Good fishing to you. I'll send people to your website, millers-sportfishing.com, to book a trip for Monster Lake St. Clair Muskies with one of the best out there, Captain Don Miller at Motorcity Muskies, millers-sportfishing.com. Thank you, Don. We'll take a break. When we come back, Brad Dupuy of Angler Quest Boats right here on Outdoor Magazine. By now, you know all about Angler Quest boats. The center console design, binary wall system, and smooth ride with lots of room have anglers convinced a pontoon can be a great fishing rig. And the folks at Michigan-based Angler Quest continue to make their boats even better. Now the signature You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM. You can hear us in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY AM and FM. That's 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. And you can hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. The segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning, been a leader in the archery industry since what, the mid-40s? Coming up next year is the 75th anniversary of Boning, Michigan-based company. Been making great archery accessories for so many years. I like to say they make everything for bows and arrows except bows and arrows, and they do a wonderful, wonderful job. Check them out online at boning.com, B-O-H-N-I-N-G, boning.com. While you are online, of course, I would encourage you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and check out AnglerQuestPontoons.com, and Quest is Q-W-E-S-T, AnglerQuestPontoons.com. You know I'm a big fan of Michigan-made Angler Quest boats. Been running one for several years here now. And the guy behind Angler Quest is Brad Dupuis, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Brad, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, we're doing great, Mike. It's fishing season. The walleye bite's strong, and I'm happy to be on the show.
Always a pleasure to have you along with us, my friend. And now, listen, I know, like everybody else, you guys got hit hard by the COVID situation. Are you back up and running? Are you making boats now?
Yes, we've been making boats since we were legally able to manufacture in mid-May. It definitely set us back. We had a lot of sold boats that were virtually all sold boats, retail sold boats that were on schedule. We're on those now, completing them daily as we speak, and things are going strong. Things are actually very strong out there in the marine industry, and it's really, really nice to see after such an event as COVID.
Well, excellent to see, and I see it all the time. Like my home water of Saginaw Bay, Brad, I can't go out there these days without seeing another, maybe several other Angler Quests out there.
Yeah, that is exciting, isn't it? And, it's really happening for us, too, on Angler Quest. We're really starting to see, nationwide, we're starting to see some really cool stuff. We got a great dealer in Oklahoma that just put in a beautiful 10-boat order. We got a really good guy down in South Carolina, a new dealer that just signed up yesterday. We've got a lot of things happening nationally, and it's really exciting to see. And, of course, out on the bay, it's always awesome to see all the Angler Quests out there, and that's a pretty cool thing.
And all of this started right here in St. Louis, Michigan, when you and your brother Mark got together and just started kicking around this idea.
Yeah, Mark really encouraged me to come up with a design that would be a design how I would want to fish it out on Saginaw Bay and in the trolling environment that we have on the Great Lakes. And, of course, a pontoon boat. The thought was, boy, is that going to work? It's a pontoon boat, big water. But, boy, it has really come full circle, and with the help of everybody here within the shop, our engineering department, it's really come full circle, and, it's a great product, and we're really starting to see a lot of sales, and it's very exciting, Mike.
How much has the design changed? I'm not even talking about 2021, but the 2020 models, how similar or different are they from that very first prototype I saw sitting on the grass there in Freeland about 7 years ago?
Oh, boy, it has changed substantially. That very first boat that you saw was one of our pleasure boat helms that we located right in the center of the boat and kind of fabricated something out of nothing, per se. Nowadays, heck, we've got the big center console updated helm that will fit electronics up to a 12-inch screen in all the different electronics brands. The binary wall system's been tweaked, and we've done some things to help the manufacturability of that. We're continually making improvements and tweaks. The Trackstack Tower, which is synonymous with the Pro Troll, is now a standard tilt-down option. With all this high water, to be able to get under bridges and things of that nature are so critical, not only here in the Great Lakes, but throughout the U.S. High water is prevalent, that's for sure.
Any big changes coming up for these 2021 models, which will be unveiled here in about a month or so?
No, not really. The 2021 product, we really got set back by the COVID crisis. We had 6 weeks of downtime where we were not really working on that from an engineering standpoint. Once again, we're going to have some tweaks. We're going to have some really cool things that we're offering, but the base design is essentially going to be the same, Mike. We're looking to just carry the momentum forward with what we have, and there'll be some bits and pieces that'll be cool changes, and I think a lot of people will look at them as substantial, but I myself just look at it as a tweak. So for the most part, Mike, we're really running with what we got and are going to keep the ball rolling.
Well, you get to a point, I mean, those first few years, you're going to make some fairly major changes, but the boat gets to a point, which is where I feel Angler Quest is now. You get to a point where it's darn near the perfect fishing boat, and any changes you can make are going to be probably minor after that.
Yeah, you are correct. Absolutely. We've made a lot of changes to risers and tubes and a lot of different things, and we're very comfortable with where the design is. And, it gets to a certain point, too, where you want to just keep running with what you got to keep the ball rolling. Once you change and start doing different things, it really holds things up a little bit, and it equates to a lot of work, So we're going to keep the ball rolling, Mike.
Well, and congrats on that, Brad. You have a wonderful boat. I am a big fan of Angler Quest. The fact that they're made in Michigan, I love. But once you spend time on the water, you are absolutely sold. Get out on an Angler Quest, and you will know what I mean. Check them out online at anglerquestpontoons.com, anglerquestpontoons.com. Thank you, Brad Dupuis. We'll take a break. This week's Ask Avery segment coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sandusky on WMIC at 660 AM. You can hear us in Mount Pleasant on WMMI 8:30 AM, 92.3 FM. And you can hear us in Flint on Super Talk 1570 WWCK. This week's Ask Avery segment is brought to you by Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And this week's question is from Gary Narrett. And normally these questions are emailed into me, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, or you can hit me up on the social media platforms. Gary was actually at my house to give us a bid on a permanent fence to keep the geese out of the backyard, a permanent goose barrier. And he said, "Hey, Mike, I've been seeing more dead deer than normal on the sides of the roads these days, and I'm wondering why." And this is Gary. He says, "Is it somehow related to COVID and people's changed travel patterns?" And actually, Gary, I've had a lot of people say the same thing, including Pat Johnston, who is here in the studio with me right now. He says, "Yeah, we are seeing more dead deer along the road." Well, I don't have an answer for this because I'm not an expert. However, Chad Stewart is the deer specialist for the Michigan DNR, and he has graciously agreed to address this question. Chad, welcome back. How are you?
Great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, always a pleasure. So, first of all, have you been hearing this or seeing this from anybody that there's a unusually large number of dead deer on the roadways this year?
Actually, no. And I think when we were texting a little bit yesterday, it was kind of surprising because, if anything, I would predict that the number of deer vehicle collisions would actually go down a little bit over the past couple months compared to last year at this time, given people are generally reducing their activities and movements because of the current situation that we're in.
Yeah, that's what I would have been thinking as well. Now, don't we normally, though, see more car deer accidents at 2 times of the year, in the fall during the rut and in the springtime during the fawning season?
Yes. So, when you look at October, November, December, basically 40% plus of the deer vehicle collisions that occur across the entire year occur in that 3-month period. And you're about at 50% if you want to throw in January as well. Now, there is a spike that you tend to see in like late May, early June with deer vehicle collisions as well. So, when you break it down by month, June is usually about the 5th highest month in terms of overall deer vehicle collisions, and that's generally believed to be because they're spread out a lot more on the landscape, mostly associated with fawning behavior. But in areas where you've got a lot of people and a lot of deer, specifically in southern Michigan, the green up occurs. Deer are spread out a lot more. They're moving around a lot more to separate themselves and that's going to translate into a slight bump up in deer vehicle collisions at that time.
Now, anybody who hits a deer, obviously, it becomes a big problem. But overall, statewide, statistically, I mean, is the number of deer killed in car deer accidents big enough where you guys have to figure this into your equations at all? How do you guys look at it?
Yeah, so we view deer vehicle collisions really as like what we call a secondary indicator. So, the first thing that we primarily look at in terms of how the deer herd is doing is we look at hunter harvest and success rates and things like that, things that we have a lot more control over. Deer vehicle collisions, we know, are reported variably across the state. So we cannot rely on them completely. But as a state in general, we do look at those numbers. We do take those into account. We just don't put as much emphasis on it when determining trends. And looking at the data that we have available to us from 2018, we know that there are at least 50,000 reported deer vehicle collisions that occur in the state of Michigan. So it's not insignificant. It's something that we obviously are aware of, and we obviously respond to and incorporate in our estimates in terms of how we respond or make recommendations for deer management.
Well, Chad, listen, I appreciate you addressing this. I'm not sure we've really answered Gary's question, but we have gotten some information out there about car deer accidents and all that sort of stuff. So I appreciate your time, Chad. Michigan.gov/DNR is the website, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. Following up on this, actually, Mark Grossa, Michigan's meteorologist from Mlive, said the same thing to me. He said, I'm seeing, he's driving back from Traverse City. He said, I'm seeing so many dead deer along the road. And Mark, being the scientific type that he is, he said, Avery, why is there not an app to address this? He said, you've got all these fresh deer kills along the road. Now, you wouldn't want to go out and get a deer that had been out there for 3 days in the summer heat, right? I get that. But you got a fresh road kill there. He says, why isn't there an app where when somebody hits a deer, they can report it on this app? And then anybody who's looking for fresh venison can go to this app and see if there was a reported fresh roadkill in their area, and they could sign up and get that. I said, Mark, that's not a bad idea. So if you're looking to somehow make some money or help people out, maybe if you're an app developer, you can come up with something like that. So listen, Gary Naird, I appreciate your question about why so many dead deer. I don't think we gave you a good answer, but you're not the only one who is seeing this. Several people I've talked to are seeing the same thing. And again, thanks to our friends at Security Credit Union for making the Ask Avery segment possible. SecurityCU.org, SecurityCU.org. You can always send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you have a question for the Ask Avery segment, it can be something directly for me, or as I did this time, I will pass it along to somebody else. We'll take a break. When we come back, Dave Mull in hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Forward Corporation and T.R. McTaggart, Angler Quest Boats, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter. I do certainly appreciate that. Also appreciate the fact that we're in the 3rd hour of this week's Outdoor Magazine show, and you are along with me. Thank you. There are a lot of things you could be doing with your time right now, a lot of different media sources you could be watching or listening to, and the fact that you are hearing my voice, either the broadcast version of the show or the podcast, that just makes me feel very blessed, and I appreciate your support. Of course, the good thing about radio and podcasting is you can be doing something else while you listen. Try doing that with video. For example, you could be out fishing right now listening to the show. In fact, I heard, I got to look it up here. I heard from some folks last week who were on Lake Michigan. Fishing Kings, and I don't think they realized the show was recorded, but they said, can you give us a shout out? Well, I'm going to find that email. I'm going to give you a shout out. In fact, more often than not, when I talk to people who are guests on the show at this time of year, they're on the water fishing while we record the show. And that's what's happening this time around with Dave Mull. You know Dave. Been around the fishing industry for many, many years, going way back. Probably, 30, 35 years back to his days at StarCraft. He was with Great Lakes Angler Magazine. He's an outdoor writer. And these days, he is what I call the YakMaster. YakMaster Dave Mull loves his kayak fishing, and he's out doing it right now. Dave, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. I got to get the YakMaster T-shirt, though. That's awesome.
Yes, you are officially. I love giving people titles, and yours is now the YakMaster.
Well, I'll take it, I guess. Yeah, that works.
It's a good title. It's honor. Yeah. Where are you, Dave?
I am out on Muskegon Lake, watching the weather. There's a thunderstorm. We can just barely hear the thunder way off in the distance, but it's headed for us. So I'm not too far from the vehicle. And practicing for a Sunday bass tournament, and right now I'm on a really hot rock bass bite. Only one of the target species, and it was only about 6 inches long. Seriously, rock bass count
towards your tournament?
No, rock bass don't count.
Oh, okay.
But I'm certainly, I got them figured out.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they want a bone crankbait.
It's got to be, as we are recording the show today on Wednesday, it's got to be unbearably hot and muggy out there.
It's, not too bad on the water. There's a little bit of a breeze kind of southwest, so there's some Lake Michigan air coming up this way. At home, it was 80 when I walked out at 5 o'clock this morning, and here it's about mid-70s, so it's not too bad.
When you talk about a breeze, of course, that is always the bane of big water anglers. How do your kayaks take wind and waves?
Mine take it well in my truck, in wind and waves. I don't like wind and waves, but they take it fine. I've been out in some stuff that I don't want to go out in again, and lots of guys don't even think twice about it. Fishing out on Lake St Clair and trolling for salmon and all sorts of stuff out of kayaks, and they're not too leery of the bigger waves. But I'm getting up there where if I'm not having fun, if I'm a little bit uncomfortable, I'd just as soon go back to the truck. Sure, I can relate. I'm there.
Yeah. What is the safety factor of these, though? I'm thinking canoes, the old-fashioned canoes. I don't think I ever felt comfortable in a canoe. I always felt I was going to tip the darn thing over.
Yeah, that's true. Today's fishing kayaks are designed to have a lower center of gravity than those old canoes where you had to sit up, right along with the gunnel or kneel down. And those things were just torture. Relatively speaking, these things, the kayaks today are pretty deluxe. I've got a comfortable seat. I just got a new Old Town Autopilot 136, which has a Minn Kota trolling motor in it with autopilot and spot lock. And it's not even like kayak fishing anymore. I'm embarrassed to fish around guys with their paddles and stuff, and not just be cranking in fish after fish. You still have to be able to catch fish, but it's super deluxe. It's better than I deserve, Mike.
Well, I'm not going to say that, but I will say once I started fishing with autopilot and that spot lock feature and stuff, man, I think now that I've gotten used to it, I don't think I could fish without it. And I know that's spoiled and elitist, but it would be a whole different ballgame.
It would be. And, I've been doing this for about 8 years. And from the beginning, when electric motors were just starting to show up on kayaks, I swore I would never get one just because kayak fishing and pedaling or paddling in kayak was really my last form of regular exercise. But it took about 4 minutes with an autopilot trolling motor to change my mind forever. This is just super deluxe. Like right now, I'm tucked in behind a big gravel mountain. Some seagull nests up on it, and I've got spot lock on, and I'm out of the wind and just kind of sitting here in the rolling waves about 30 feet from the broken limestone lining the bank here, and, you know, just very comfy.
Well, you paint a beautiful picture. What made you? I mean, again, like I when I was setting this up years ago, you were with Starcraft. You were a big water guy. You were a Great Lakes trolling guy. What made you even start looking at kayaks in the first place?
You know, it was just a happenstance, really. I never really decided to become a kayak angler and went out and got a kayak. We had a kayak at Great Lakes Angler that we had for a cover photo for Hobie, and I had the choice to buy it or ship it back, and so I bought it. And it sat there for a year and a half before I even really used it. But the first time I used it, I had a bass drag me into some lily pads. It wasn't a very big bass, and I was like, this is pretty cool. So resonated from there, and, you know, from there I got involved with setting up some tournaments for a marine store, and, you know, started writing about kayak fishing, and I'm kind of pigeonholed in as a kayak writer these days, which I don't mind.
I was going to say,
enjoy it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not a bad thing, though, is it?
No, there's plenty of markets for kayak stories, and you know, it's kind of new and it's interesting, and there's an avid bunch of guys that are just getting into it. You know, not everybody had fished before that gets into kayak fishing, so there's a desire for knowledge about fishing in general and kayak fishing specifically, and, you know, hopefully I can fill the void for these folks.
So what is the appeal? Is it the fact you can get a kayak for a fraction of what it costs it would be from one of my beloved Angler Quests? Is that what it comes down to?
That's part of it. And the other nice thing is you can pretty much use any vehicle to get your kayak from your house to your wherever you want to fish. It doesn't take up a lot of room when, you know, you live in a neighborhood and don't have a big driveway and a garage. You can keep your kayak right along the side of the house and, you know, out of the way. And it's overall just a lot less expensive than having a boat. You know, there's no gas involved, and other than your vehicle gas. And, you know,
what about the? I think the thing I would miss would be the camaraderie. I love to fill up the Angler Quest with 2, 3, 4, 5 guys and just go out there and shoot the breeze and have fun. I mean, in a kayak, listen, I love fishing alone too, so I get that. But in a kayak,
sure,
you are alone, right? Obviously.
Well, kinda. But I usually try and fish with a buddy. Like, you know, this is a massive lake, so my buddy Jeff Gilliland from Wayland. We met for breakfast here. A breakfast joint was open, and we had a huge breakfast for the first time in 3 months. And we're fishing within sight of each other. You know, when we catch a fish, we'll go over and talk about how it happened and stuff. So there's still the camaraderie, and really, as far as camaraderie goes, I've never met a more mellow bunch of people than the people involved with kayak fishing. You know, I do a lot of these tournaments, and guys are out competing against each other and trading lures, and it's not as serious as any other tournaments, I've ever been around. And I've done walleye tournaments and bass boat tournaments and salmon tournaments, and, in those scenarios, everybody's kind of like a gunslinger, Kayak fishing is different. I mean, just the crowd that is attracted to it is, there's a lot of people that are new to fishing, like I said, and, the experienced guys, most of them don't mind sharing information and letting people know what they're catching fish on. And, one of my best friends, I met him in a tournament. He wasn't catching any fish. And so I gave him the swim bait that I've been catching all my fish on, and 4 years later, we're best buds,
We're talking with the YakMaster himself, Dave Mull. He's on Muskegon Lake for a kayak bass fishing tournament. Muskegon Lake. I used to spend a lot of time around Muskegon Lake when we were over there fishing for kings. By the way, shout out to Brandon and Megan Grebus. Hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. They were listening to the show while salmon fishing on the Manatees, and they wanted me to say hi. So I just did. We'll take a break. More with Dave Mull, the YakMaster, coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Saginaw on WSGW-FM 100.5. You can hear us in Ishpeming on WIAN 1240 AM. And you can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. I have the folks at Reader. In fact, as I am in the studio right now, there's a Reader guy opening up our sprinkler system. He was going to do it a little bit earlier. Well, they wanted to do it way earlier, right? But the whole COVID thing shut him down. Opening up our sprinkler system and our water feature. But I've had to mow the lawn, fertilize the lawn, spring cleanup, fall cleanup, trim the trees. And the reason I do that is the more time they spend working on my place, the more time I can spend fishing. So I figured that's a pretty good trade-off. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. Dave Mull is a guy who likes to fish. In fact, Dave Mull is a guy who loves to fish. He has made his career in the boating and fishing industry. And if I remember right, Dave, first time I met you might have been at an Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Writers Conference, and you were, I think, working for StarCraft at the time.
Yeah, it was way back then. I'm thinking it was at a walleye tournament on the Tittabawassee that I met you. And I was working at StarCraft, and I believe you were working for a TV station.
I was working for TV5 in Saginaw at the time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's where I remember we met.
Okay.
But my memory is not that great.
Well, and mine is worse, and I readily admit that. Tell me about Muskegon Lake. That's an interesting fishery, isn't it?
It really is. It's one that I don't spend enough time on. It has so much water. It has so much different kinds of stuff. It has largemouth and smallmouth in it. A lot of weeds, a lot of breaks and ledges and rocks and man-made stuff and natural stuff. It's one that I wish I lived closer because I would love to really figure it out because just a massive amount of water.
Yeah. Is it just bass that you guys target from kayaks?
Yeah, right. For the most part, there are some multi-species tournaments where you have like your two biggest pike, your two biggest bass, and your two biggest panfish. And there are some pike tournaments and crappie tournaments and stuff. But here in Michigan, by and large, I think maybe 95% of the tournaments are bass for kayaks. And there are a lot of them. There's a ton of tournaments.
Are there?
Well, you could fish one every weekend and Tuesdays and Wednesday nights too now. I think some Thursday nights. There's a group that has 3-hour tournaments around the state. It's called Topwater. And they run a nice show. $30 entry fee. They pay 3 places if they have enough people. Very casual. You have 3 hours to fish, and it's a lot of fun. It's a good way to experience new water. Last year, I think I had been on one lake before, so other than a couple times being able to pre-fish, I was basically pre-fishing in the tournament. My whole strategy was just to stay by the ramp. And I did finish second for Angler of the Year, so it wasn't a bad strategy.
Good for you.
It's just a lot of fun.
I'm one of those guys. I enjoy my fishing so much, and it is a place for me just to relax and get away that I don't want to inject the competition of a tournament into my relaxation.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying, though, is it is a way to get you to learn new techniques and especially to learn new water.
Yeah, that's what I really like about it. I like competition. I like, having bets on the first fish and biggest fish and that kind of stuff. And it's fun to match your skills against a bunch of other guys, and and especially when it's mostly younger guys, and you can do better than them now and then. Like one guy, I just won a tournament a couple Thursdays ago, and some guy wrote me and was like, "Hey, you haven't lost a step yet, huh?"
Old fella.
I've lost several steps, but I can still get lucky.
Well, speaking of that, when I look at these kayaks, I'm thinking, actually, I'm in better shape than I have been in years, but still, I'm not a young man anymore, and I'm not sure. You know how tall I am. I'm not sure I would fit in one of those things, Dave.
I'm pretty sure you would. The one I'm in now, I'm here with my wiener dog, Gus, and there's an amazing amount of space. And the capacity is like 550 pounds. So, even though I have a full-size trolling motor battery, which is 50 pounds, and I weigh around 200, I've got plenty of weight to spare. I don't have 200 pounds of tackle along, maybe 195.
Yeah. And you're trying to get that 200 pounds.
Right. But, speaking of that, I have 8 rods with me right now.
Really?
All stowed behind me, so I just have to twist around and get one and, try some other approach as conditions change and the place I'm fishing changes.
Are they stored upright in a rack behind you?
Yeah, there. 6 of them are in a crate or on a crate with vertical rod holders, and 2 of them are right kind of next to me and behind me in gimbal mount holders that are molded into the kayak. So,
do you ever miss the big water, the big fish, the kings, the big boats? Do you still have a desire to get out there and do that?
Yeah, every once in a while. I still enjoy it. Like I went out with Uncle Bud, my 87-year-old, not uncle, but everybody calls him Uncle Bud, in his boat. And we caught a couple kings, caught a couple coho, and, it was a blast. I really enjoyed it. But I don't really have the desire to have another boat to do that with anymore. I do have a boat that I can do it with, a 17.5-foot Miracraft. And it is set up with rod trees and stuff. So, I'm going to spend some time on Saginaw Bay trolling for walleyes this summer. But overall, the kayak thing is what I think about all the time. I want to get better at it. It's a good reason to stay in shape and not gain weight. It's just what I'm about these days. And I haven't spurned Great Lakes trolling at all. If somebody invites me to go, I'm always happy to go and get some fillets and all that kind of stuff. But the whole kayak thing kind of consumed me, I think.
I'm going to put on my amateur psychologist degree, hang my shingle out. I wonder if any of this, Dave, is the getting away from the big water stuff is somehow related to that story of you going down on Lake Michigan when your boat went down that you've told us so many times here on the air. Is that a factor at all?
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. And that's probably one reason I don't risk a kayak out in any kind of waves on the Great Lakes. That stuff just happens so fast. And, after that happened to me, that was in July of 2012 when our boat sank out of South Haven. And it took me a good month to get back on the water. I didn't think I was afraid, but then I had an invitation and I, like the week after, and I declined. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But, then I got back into it. I went out a month later and, I did it fairly regularly after that until I got into the kayak thing. Like I say, it's really fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy all kinds of fishing, and I certainly still enjoy salmon trolling. But it's still has me a little spooked. I think about it every time I go on the big water, and I generally wear my own inflatable life vest whenever I go, just in case. And guys who are like that don't know the story might say something like, "Well, what do you think? My boat's going to sink?" Just reply, "Maybe."
I've been there, done that, and don't want to take the chance again.
Yep.
I was thinking, though, with that kayak, like on later in the summer, you could actually target kings in Muskegon Lake in the channel where you are right now.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and that's really cool. I have not done it yet, but some friends of mine that I fish tournaments with do it. We tried it up at Frankfurt last year. My buddy that I'm fishing with today, we were unsuccessful. We were just there too late or something. The kings had already moved up into the zoo zone by the dam, so we didn't get any. But that's definitely on my list of things I want to do is catch a king out of this. I also want to catch a big flathead catfish out of a kayak. Those are two things high on the quote-unquote bucket list.
Where do we find you online these days? I mean, is there a Dave Mull kayakfishing.com website, or where if we wanted to learn more about you?
Well, I have a WordPress site. It's WordPress/Dave Mull that I post articles to, just reprints mostly.
Yeah.
And then my Facebook page, just Dave Mull.
Okay.
With my, you can tell it's me by the kayak with a dog on it.
And I'll tell you this, any promotional material that you make up for sale that has the YakMaster name or logo, I want a cut of it. Not a very big cut, but I want a piece of it.
Yeah. Well, that would be too much pressure. Right now, I started a company just as kind of a joke. It's called Grumpy Paddler Sport Fishing. And I've got the decals and stuff on my kayak and truck and stuff. It's kind of a conversation starter. Because the grandkids all call me Grumpy Papa, is where it came from. So I decided to be Grumpy Paddlers.
There you go. Well, listen, Dave, always a pleasure to check in with you. Good luck there in that tournament on Muskegon Lake. And even if you don't catch fish, I know you're going to have fun.
I definitely will. Thank you, Mike.
All right, always a pleasure. Dave Mull, a guy who's been around the fishing and the boating industry forever. Well, not forever, but certainly a long, long time. You might remember him from a Great Lakes Angler. That magazine, he was I think he was the online editor, very heavily involved in that. And, of course, and I didn't ask him to go into the details this time around because he's told the story several times here on the show about when his boat sank on Southern Lake, Michigan. And it was just terrifying, yes, sobering, yes, and really got you thinking. I might talk more about that after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. In fact, you can hear it all over northern Michigan. A very, very strong blowtorch of a station. Very good station. You can also hear us on a couple of more good stations, great stations in Holland on WHTC AM and FM, 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on our flagship station, News Radio 790. As always, I say flagship with no disrespect to any of our affiliate stations. But I am in the studios of WSGW right now. Of course, they're known as the Outdoor Magazine studio when I'm here. Pat Johnston doing a wonderful job, as always. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Wilds Plumbing and Heating. From plumbing, heating, air conditioning, sump pumps, ductwork cleaning, you name it, everything to keep the mechanics of your house running soundly and to keep you comfortable. The folks from Wilds can help you out. Check them out online at wildsplumbingandheating.com. That's WILDS, wildsplumbingandheating.com. And don't be surprised if the guys come over. If you're in the mood, you can probably talk a little hunting or fishing too, and I always enjoy that. Also, I really enjoyed the conversation with Dave Mull. Dave's just a great guy. They call him Redbeard because a big guy, although he's lost a bunch of weight too. A tall guy. He used to have a great big red bushy beard, and the guy just really, really loves to fish. And I have changed the way I look at big water after hearing him describe when his fishing boat sank out there in southern Lake Michigan. And it wasn't in extremely rough weather. It was just, one of those basic choppy days that a lot of people, myself included, tend to go out on if you want to fish bad. They got some line caught up in the prop. They stopped to try to clear it, took a wave over the transom, if I remember right, and then everything just went south in a hurry. The boat went down fast. They had a kid with them. The kid was wearing a life jacket. None of the other 2 or 3 adults were. Nobody died here. Okay, nobody died. But they were all rescued. But Dave spent hours in the water, and he said it was interesting in that he was hanging onto a cooler. Boats would come trolling by so closely he could read the MC numbers on the hull, and he could hear the guys on the boat talking, and the guys never saw him. Which just really, really surprised me. And as a result, Dave says, you heard him say, well, he will not go on the water without wearing a PFD. Now, he wears one of those inflatable PFDs, those horseshoe ones that go around the back of your neck. I don't do that, but it's probably not a bad idea. I have this certain sense of safety, comfort on the Angler Quest. Of course, the Angler Quest has those 3 big tubes where one of them could puncture and you could still stay afloat. So I'm not worried about that. I shouldn't say I'm not worried about it. But I guess the concept of maybe falling overboard should always be there, right? And there are times when I'm out there fishing in a chop, especially by yourself. You're leaning against the side walls to set a board or to bring a fish in or whatever you're doing, and a wave hits you just right from the right direction. You could, even with the high sidewalls on that Angler Quest or any other, nice big water boat, it could put you off balance. You could fall in. The thing about being on the water, when things go south, they go south in a hurry, and they tend to just cascade and multiply. Like if you're driving down the road and you get a flat tire, well, you pull over to the side of the road and you either fix it or you call a wrecker, but it's not probably life-threatening. Or you run out of gas. Okay, you feel stupid, but you call somebody and they come and bring you more gas. Out on the water, you're 8-10 miles offshore. The wind picks up. You have a mechanical problem, the equivalent of a flat tire. You run out of gas. Things really happen fast. I've been fortunate that I've never, as much time as I've spent on the water, I've never had anything terribly bad happen. I've had some close encounters. I've had my boat break down. I had a brand new Crestliner, a Great Lakes Sabre, beautiful trolling boat. I was so proud of that boat. First or second weekend I had it, we were fishing out of Manistee, and there was a problem with the engine. Had to get towed in by the Coast Guard. That's not a comfortable feeling. That's an embarrassing feeling when they make you put those, your big orange life jackets on, and they tow you back in. But my dad always said, if you spend enough time on the water, you are either going to be towed in or you're going to have to tow somebody in. And the courtesy on the water is if somebody needs help, you tow them in. Because sooner or later, you're going to need to be towed in too. I had a situation on Lake Erie one time on a photo shoot. I'm not going to tell you who's involved, but names you would recognize. We were running 2 Starcrafts out there, basically side by side, and the guy running the first boat, for whatever reason, decided not to look back over his shoulder to see where the other boat was. We were offset slightly. And he turned the wrong direction, and he turned right into the path of the second boat, and we're going probably 35 miles an hour. That was very close. That's one of those things where you, for a split second, you go, "Uh-oh, is this how it ends?" Fortunately, it wasn't. We will take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. And I'm quite sure he has a fish recipe for us. Also curious, when will he be able to open Oscar and Joey's restaurant? We'll find out after the break right here at Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery, and so glad to have you along with us. It is a blessing, a pleasure, and honor to sit at this microphone every week and just shoot the breeze about something that so many of us are so passionate about, this outdoor lifestyle. And we cherish it. We look forward to it. Like Dave Mull says, he says, when I'm not on the water, he says, I'm thinking about fishing. I'm thinking about kayaking. Well, I can relate to that. I'm sure many of you can as well. And if you've been with us at all, I like to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dave Minar. And guess what? He's here once again with a very, very special recipe this time around. David, welcome back.
It is pretty special, Mike. It's one of them fish that people might not think about too much, but it's really a good eater.
Sheephead.
Yeah, people refer to it in not such kind names. Sometimes they're derogatory with this name.
Well, and I know people, listen, they're a great fighting fish. I personally don't love to catch them because it gets in the way of catching walleye, and it takes so long to get them in, and they make such a mess in the boat. But you got to give them this. They can fight, and you're telling me they're good to eat, too.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I've never thrown one back after I tried it the first time. And once you try this recipe, I doubt you'll be throwing them away again if you like to eat fish. This is going to be for 4 portions. You want to skin them deep. They have a tough skin, and they got a few extra bones in it, so you're not really going to get fillets. You're going to get strips more or less, and you want to skin them deep. They have some red meat underneath of the skin, and the meat's actually very, very white and really nice smelling to it. It's not strong fishy at all. So you're going to need about, pretty close to a cup of some diced tomatoes. You can use Romas. They're real meaty. You want about 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of diced red peppers, kind of a medium dice. About 1/2 cup of diced onions. You could use white or red. It's up to you. Anywhere from 2 to 4 cloves of garlic. You want to dice that up. I like a garlic dish, so I probably use 4. 1 to 1.5 cups sliced mushrooms. A couple tablespoons of capers. Nice little pickled berry that has a wonderful flavor for fish. About a cup and a half of white wine, lime or lemon juice to your taste. And if you like a little spicy, I would use cayenne pepper in this dish. You need about 1/4 to 1/2 stick of butter, 4 cups of cooked rice, and then you want flour to dredge, olive oil to saute, and 2 beaten up eggs. As I said, you want to skin this fish real deep. You want to make sure that you trim almost all of that red meat up. Not that it really has a bad, strong taste or anything. It's just much nicer. When it cooks up, it's going to be snow white also. And like I said, there's a fair amount of bones, so you're going to figure out how to trim it up. You're going to take, and first you're going to sprinkle cayenne pepper if you so desire, then flour, beaten up eggs, and in a nice hot pan, you're going to brown both sides. You don't have to worry about skin side up or anything because it doesn't show. You want to replace this to a casserole. You're going to saute up the onions, the garlic, the pepper, the mushrooms, the capers, gently. You don't want to brown it or anything. You just want to break that flavor loose. Add your wine, the butter, get it nice and hot, fast, cook it down. It's kind of thick and creamy. Pour this all over the fish. You want to bake it 350 degrees uncovered. You want this to kind of reduce down and concentrate the flavor. It's not really a fish that takes a long time to cook, such as the catfish that we spoke about last week, where catfish takes a long time. So after it's done, ring your plate around with rice for the individual portion. You want to take the fish fillets or pieces and put it in the middle and then top with the veggies. And if the sauce, before you put it on the fish, if it's a little thick, you can put it on the burner slowly so you don't, if it's glass, ceramic, or like that, you won't break it. Just put it on a low heat. Put a little bit more white wine or a little bit of water and swirl it around a little bit so that you get nice and thick. Not too thick, and if it gets greasy from the butter, add that little bit of water or white wine, and it'll come right back to creamy. So once you try this fish, I guarantee you'll never throw another one back.
Really? Is it a strong smelling or a strong tasting fish?
No, it's very, very mild. You wouldn't believe it, Mike.
Yeah, I guess not.
When we do fish fries up to the cabin, a lot of times, I'll put in the sheephead along with the walleye pieces when we have because we got a couple of small fryers and a fry daddy and like that. And we use the Zatarans or the Drakes. And people can't even tell the difference. It cooks up nice and white, just like walleye.
Well, it's
a very underutilized fish.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, real quick before we have to go, when are you going to be able to open up Oscar and Joey's?
Well, the border's not open. I'd say around 85-90% of our business is the tourist trade. The hotels are very, very slow. I'm going to wait to open up. I've talked to different restaurants, and they're not doing the business, and I just can't see losing money to open up.
No, I understand. So the gist of it is it's going to be a little bit yet.
Yeah, it's going to be probably. Who knows when the border opens up? Between Canada and the U.S., who knows what they're going to do? Yep.
All right, David. Always a pleasure. We will look forward to Oscar and Joey's opening up as soon as possible. Appreciate you being along with me this week. Don't forget you can always find me on the web at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and you can send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. We'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.